All right, and we are back with episode 28 of Modern Prescription. My name is Dr. Deepak Dugar.
And I'm Dr. Jeff Toll.
And today we're talking about some great stuff. A lot of cool, exciting things.
This was a weird week for both of us.
TV and media week for you and me.
Yeah.
You were all over LA Times. We're going to talk about why you were on the LA Times front cover of the entire LA Times.
I'd never expected to be on the front cover.
Maybe
cover. Like the health section, but not the actual front cover of the LA
Times. But it's funny because now after you've been on the front cover, now you're asking why it's your first time.
Well, now that I think about it, they could have featured me sooner.
So we're going to talk.
But we will talk about how the fact that since it's 2020, none of my friends saw the front cover of the LA Times.
Only our parents' generation.
My parents saw the LA Times cover.
Yeah. So why Dr. Toll is on the front cover, we're going to get into. We're going to talk about vaccinations and how they're being handled and how they should be handled ethically.
I think this is, one of the most interesting topics this week is who should get the vaccine in what order.
Yeah.
There's reasons on both sides. There's reasons why healthcare workers should get them. There are reasons why the old and sick should get them.
Right.
There's reasons why
Tom Cruise should get it.
Tom Cruise should get it. So I think it's interesting, and I think it's an ethical issue that there's not really a right answer.
Right.
There's an answer for what would make less deaths. There was an answer for what would make the economy restart. There was an answer for who deserves the vaccine because they've been taking care of patients at the bedside for 6 months at the risk of their own families. Don't they freaking deserve the vaccine ahead of someone who maybe has a higher risk of getting sicker from
But what about the donors to the hospital, the billionaire donors? Don't they deserve it?
Donors.
Without them, there'd be no hospital.
I mean, you could argue, and joking aside, you can argue if someone donates $1 million to a hospital and that hospital then goes on to take care of a lot of people.
Yeah, hundreds of thousands of patients. Do they not deserve the vaccine?
I mean, I could see why someone would say no, but I could see why someone would say yes.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah, absolutely.
They're making a huge impact on societal impact. So.
Huge. We're going to get into that. We're going to get into why Tom Cruise freaked out and why is it justifiable or not. And Dr. Toll is going to give us his movie insight testing movie sets.
Right.
Talk about Mucinex D and does the D help get you pregnant?
The D always helps you get you pregnant.
There's a TikTok claim that Mucinex D helps you get pregnant. We're going to talk about it.
Some kind of D.
And then talk about plastic surgery, really strange.
Do's and don'ts.
Yeah, do's and don'ts, especially don'ts, because we had a very, very famous influencer who just passed away from a botched Brazilian butt lift in Colombia, and talk about do's and don'ts of plastic surgery.
Would it have been better in Brazil?
Yeah, good question.
They came up with it.
That's very true. It's funny, I talked to my Brazilian plastic surgery colleagues, and they don't call it a Brazilian butt lift.
Did they?
We call it that. They don't call it that.
Is it because I think the idea is Brazilians have
that body naturally.
Yes,
exactly. Yes. It's us imitating their body. It didn't actually, even though, it's hilarious. My Brazilian friends think we're such idiots for calling it that.
Is it a Brazilian here in Los Angeles or a Brazilian back in Brazil?
No, Brazilian back in Brazil.
It's interesting. So you network with surgeons around the world.
Yeah. I have friends in Korea, Brazil, Australia, and I have like 5 or 6 buddies in India. And we were all on WhatsApp chains and we all talk together because it just gives us insight on what's going on.
It's so great that's how,
It's a common language. Medicine's a common language.
Absolutely.
Whatever field you're in. If you're an engineer, you can talk to engineers across the world. If you're, an internal medicine doctor, if you're a plastic surgeon.
Absolutely.
There's a common language for most specialties.
But it's so cool because in the old days, you could never do that.
I know.
You were like looking in a book.
Right. And you have no idea if what you're reading was true, because now that we're at our level of medicine, we realize that, wait, you want me, like I'm writing a book chapter right now.
Right.
it's like so I can write whatever I want in this chapter? They're like, yeah, just your opinions and your thoughts. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
So you realize when you read these books, it's like, all right, this may not be the full picture.
Yeah.
But we're going to get into a great episode, guys. Episode 28. Thank you guys for listening. And also our last episode of 2020.
Yep. You better go back and listen to all the ones that have come.
Yes.
Again, because you already listened to them.
Yeah. The 28 things you want for Christmas.
Yeah. So enjoy.
Enjoy. All right, we're back. My name is Dr. Deepak Dugar.
And I'm Dr. Jeff Toll.
And welcome back to another episode of Modern Prescription. This is our last episode of 2020.
Wow.
We made it the whole year.
We made it through the whole year.
Yeah, the whole year.
No train wrecks.
No train wrecks.
It was actually a big week for both of us.
Huge week. You were on you were cover of LA Times.
On the front page of the LA Times.
Front page of the LA Times. You were on Yahoo News, multiple online news platforms.
Yeah, so basically there was a story on the front page of the LA Times talking about sort of like celebrities and wealthy people in their attempts to get the vaccine, which I'll get more into. And then that was sort of picked up. And then I had interviews with CNN, Yahoo News, Spectrum News. So the CNN and Yahoo News were just in print, and then the Spectrum News aired last night. That was video. They came to my office and interviewed me.
Wow. And so that was on TV on Spectrum.
And you were on the Doctors this week.
Yeah, and I was on the Doctors this week. That's right.
We're
Big
really-
TV week for us.
Really going places.
Mono
here.
prescription TV week. It was a good week. Yours is huge because for any new listeners, Dr. Toole is one of the most famous concierge medicine doctors in LA. Takes care of a lot of celebrities, athletes, billionaires, just the who's who. So the problem with that is that there can be demanding, I assume.
Yeah, well, so I thought this was a story that was it was a little bit of a clickbaity story in the sense that it sounded interesting. What are rich people doing to get the vaccine?
Yeah.
But the truth is, in the short term at least, they're not getting it early.
Yeah.
So basically what the story was, what are the most outlandish offers? What are people saying that they're willing to do to get the vaccine? So
Right.
I've had patients say they're willing to make a charitable donation to the hospital if that could help their family get the vaccine early. And basically, some other subtle, doc, I really want the vaccine for my family. What can you guys do?
Right.
But the truth is, and this is really important, I think number one is myself and really all the concierge doctors that I've spoken to, all of us are kind of holding the line together, saying that even if we had access to the vaccine, which we don't, so the first round of the vaccine, each of the states is in control, the government is in control, and they've sent the vaccine on to big hospital facilities. And those big hospital facilities are going to be vaccinating their own staff and high-risk personnel and nursing home personnel. Interestingly, it will be them that will have the first question of, will they have to vaccinate their board members and non-clinical CEOs? And they're going to have to answer big questions.
Right.
From a private physician standpoint, we don't have access to the vaccine. So I think it's a question that will come up in the next. So this very first round where the dosing is limited, it's really the hospitals that are going to be able to have to deal with these sort of requests. But we have applied to become a vaccination center, Good Life, because we feel that we could do high capacity through the drive-through and vaccinate,
absolutely.
Hundreds of people a day or maybe thousands of people a day.
Absolutely. And you guys have storage space to put large freezers.
Yeah,
you guys could do
so
stuff
we're
like
in
this.
a massive facility where we could have the large freezers potentially and sort of vaccinate people, in a very easy, fast way, safe way.
Yeah.
And so we're hoping to do that. But at the moment, we don't have them, and no private unless the private doctor somehow got it directly through Pfizer, which would have been illegal based on what the government is allowing.
Right.
There are no private doctors who have them. There are no private doctors selling them.
So don't call your doctor's office.
There
and
are
ask for
people
it.
offering, but at least in the short term, no one has them to give away. So that's why it's really a non-story. I think it's just interesting to hear what people would give or would be willing to give. And I think...
Yeah, it's clickbaity. It's a great story.
It's a good story.
Yeah.
So I think, but the bottom line is, I think a lot of people read the story and were mad. I can't believe celebrities would try to
If they just
cut
looked at the
line.
title. Yeah.
I think we all need to realize that everyone will do whatever they can to protect their family if they're a good person. And so it's hard to fault someone who would be, because we don't know. Maybe that celebrity that you're thinking of doesn't have health issues, but maybe their father does.
Yes,
maybe their grandmother does.
Right.
Maybe they take care of, other family members that are at risk. So who knows? And I think it's a lot to judge someone to want to take care of their own family. But anyway, I think it'll be more interesting in the months to come than in this first round.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting because the story's headline was very clickbaity.
Yeah.
But it made it seem like you guys are selling the vaccine.
Correct. That's what it
And then
sounded
when you
like.
actually read it, it's very clear that you're being super ethical and you were stating, no, absolutely not.
Yes.
Nobody's getting the vaccine from me because of how much money they have or how much they pay.
Right. And so I think, having taken care of dozens and dozens of patients with COVID, I understand this is serious. And I think, the truth is other concierge doctors and I have all spoken to try to hold this line so that no one is trying to call the rest of us.
Right.
We're all, going to make sure we're giving it to those that need first. And,
Right.
and that's what's important.
Do you think, like, remember, like, when the COVID testing started, there's like these fake test centers, kind of. Do you think that'll happen? Where there's fake vaccines,
Oh wow, I didn't think it, like really fraud.
like fraud, like someone who sets up a vaccine, like, hey, come here, do a drive-through, and you get your vaccine, and
got
they're
it.
just poking them with,
I guess
with
could
IV
be.
fluids.
You would think that would be like really jail time.
Yeah, it should be.
I think, what this was compared to from some of the reporters that I spoke to was at the beginning of COVID, how some concierge doctors were charging a whole lot of money to test people when it was very difficult to get a COVID test.
Right.
But I think the difference is, at the very beginning of the pandemic, I spent hours and hours and hours and days calling every lab, every company, trying to establish relationships so that I
Right.
could get tests.
Right.
Establishing supply lines to get swabs through other countries when there were no swabs.
Yes.
We did all this work
Yeah, this costs time and money.
to help our own patients.
Right.
And so, I think at that time we were offering a service that no one else could offer because we had kind of built out the infrastructure to do it.
Yeah.
The vaccine is a little different because the government is in control of it.
Yes, very different. Yeah, you can't source it yourself. Yeah,
There's no
exactly.
way around it
Yeah.
right now. And so, it's not to say some doctors who are not ethical won't
Mm-hmm.
eventually, when more vaccines available, get it and sell it. I think we would be naive to say that won't happen, but hopefully, they really do prioritize those
Yeah.
in need. And then the question becomes, well, who are the people in need? And it's interesting. They have chosen to really focus on healthcare workers in the first batch and nursing home. And, there's so many ethical arguments as to who should be prioritized. So we know that the deaths, like 80% of the deaths are in people over age 80.
It's nursing homes.
A lot of them in nursing
Yeah,
homes, 50% or so in nursing homes. But the question is, and these are the most, bioethics is a really interesting area of what's more valuable, protecting someone who's in a nursing home that doesn't have that much quality of life from dying, or protecting
Right.
a 35-year-old
Who has a
nurse
huge
who has
future.
a family of
Yeah.
4 and a whole life ahead of them from some morbidity, maybe not death,
Right.
but maybe morbidity or loss of, wages, all these other things. And it's so difficult. And
And in the big picture, it won't make a difference because everyone's going to get the vaccine who wants it in the next few months.
Yes.
To maybe 6 months in America, at least.
I think my theory is by March, most of the high risk
yes,
people will have
gotten
it.
Yes.
By summer, most of like the 65 and older will have it. I think by fall, most people
will have had it.
will have had it.
The only reason it's so delicate of a topic is because people are dying at such a rapid rate today.
Right.
So like if you're one of those people who could have used it but didn't get it, and then you are one of those people who are going to unfortunately pass away in the next 6 weeks or 6 months,
6 months.
that's when it's really devastating.
Yeah, and there's an argument of, that it's been this whole time in the government of pure numbers of lives versus like overall, how does it affect the economy? How does it affect, all these other things? Because if you're, obviously the 80 and over folks aren't as involved in the economy. So you're saving lives, but you're not taking any steps towards reopening the economy whatsoever,
Right.
if that's who you vaccinate first. And I'm glad, glad I'm not making those ethical, bioethical decisions. And
Yeah.
I think, these are this next administration may have totally opposite views of this administration. And of course, it's this administration that's giving out the first doses.
Yeah. It's interesting. The bioethics stuff is so interesting because I remember when I was maybe in college taking like a bioethics class, and there's a thing that we all had to learn about, which is self-assisted suicide, where they assist you in, it's called euthanasia.
Yeah.
And it was always like a big topic that still today is very controversial. And it goes back to the concepts of bioethics and like, should someone be able to decline the vaccine if they are around higher risk people? Like there's a lot of people who are like, I'm never taking the vaccine, but they live at home with their grandmother who's 85. So should that be allowed? Should that be, and that's a very big bioethical question because it's the same concept as euthanasia then. How are you able to decide when your life ends? And yet how are you able to decide whether to be extremely high risk to other people in your environment, So I think it's going to be very interesting. But I think your point from last episode is really important, is that people are going to get more confidence in the vaccine as more people get it and they see less side effects.
Yeah. And so the first group who's getting the vaccine now are basically people in nursing homes and the staff of nursing homes. Obviously, there's all, most of the deaths are there. That's clearly a great place to start.
Yeah.
And then a lot of high-risk workers who are taking care of COVID patients every day. Because we always think of, whenever, someone watches Grey's Anatomy, we think doctors and nurses, but we don't think there's someone bringing food into that room with a COVID patient every single day, 3
the
times a
respiratory
day.
therapist who's doing the vent.
Therapist, the tech, the cleaning people that clean the room. All these people are exposing themselves, and they
potentially more than the doctor. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm in the room. If I have a patient with COVID, I'm in a full PPE suit. I've been trained for years of how to put on and take off.
Yeah.
And how to be sterile.
Right.
And then you're asking a cafeteria worker who's never put on anything like this to now not take the gloves off wrong and contaminate themselves.
Right, exactly.
And then they're more likely to live in a multi-generational home. And so it's just, those are the types of people that we don't think about. Why you're like, well, how does one hospital need 10,000 vaccines or whatever? That's why it starts to become so many vaccines.
Right. And this takes us to the next little segue is that this concept in a hospital is so complicated. Now imagine on a movie set. So I want to talk about Tom Cruise and his big tirade that everyone's going on about how he blew up on his staff for Mission Impossible 7? 7, right? MI7?
That's a lot of them.
It's a lot of them.
Not as many episodes as Modern Prescription, but a lot.
But so they're filming in London. It's a big deal. I mean, you test movie sets. You do Good Life Medical takes care of it. So walk us through how does that work and what happens if there is a positive test like he's concerned about?
Got it. So, the movie and entertainment business was one of the businesses that was named as an essential service. And so they were allowed to continue to operate when there was a quasi stay-at-home order for lots of other businesses. And in order to be open, there was a lot of negotiating done between the actors guilds and all the various guilds and all the power players about how they were going to try to do this. And so there was basically an agreed upon amount of testing that needs to be done. So essentially they separate the people into various pods, A, B, and C. A pod is basically anyone who may at some point be maskless, so like the actors, and then anyone who's around those people. So makeup, hair, anyone who's in the trailers or anything, and they have to be tested at a certain frequency. And then there's people on the middle who are director, photographers, lighting that are not in close within 6 feet and they can wear masks the whole time and stuff like that. And they have to be tested on a certain frequency. And then there's people like construction and who are never on set during any filming, but are on set here and there. And so on all of these movies and TV shows, anyone who's recurringly filming, we're testing multiple days per week on each person to try to keep a bubble, so to speak.
Yeah.
And in the last few weeks, obviously, as the coronavirus has spiked and LA's become like an epicenter.
The epicenter of the world.
The epicenter.
Yeah.
We've seen positive cases pretty much on every show now. What's great is we still require social distance. It's not as if just because we're testing now, you don't have to wear a mask and be distant.
Yes.
We are still masked. We are still socially
6 feet
distant.
away, yes.
So we are having positives, but very little on-set spread, if any. So we're seeing, 3 different people may be positive, but actually when you do the contact tracing, none of them were ever in the same room or talked to each other. They're 3 separate positives because when you have a crew of 500 people, 1,000 people, that's just the rate of positivity in Los Angeles.
Yeah, baseline.
Right. And so I understand the stress of these actors who they're the ones maskless, they're the ones at risk potentially. But obviously it's a safer environment there than it is pretty much anywhere
because
you
of the
can
testing.
be because of the testing that we're doing.
It sounds like what his concern was there's 2 camera operators who are not standing 6 feet apart, and they have all these very strict guidelines because if you break any of these, you can be shut down. Right? The city or whoever the ordinance is can shut them down. So I think that he was super stressed out about that, and then he basically blew up on them. And someone obviously in the cast and crew shadily recorded it, which was very, very shady of them to do. But it is what it is. So there's 2 sides to the argument. One side is saying that it was disrespectful the way he treated his staff because he was yelling, shouting, cursing, threatening But the reason behind it is very understandable because there are hundreds of people in this set, billions of dollars on the line. I mean, this is a $1 billion project. Mission Impossible movies are always $1 billion projects. And so it's a trickle down effect to hundreds of thousands of people's lives at stake in terms of people's livelihoods, income for the next 6 months. And if someone like Tom Cruise himself gets sick, the project stops for 3 to 4 weeks. You know, if a camera operator gets sick, no offense, the camera operators are great people, but you could replace them. If a grip gets sick, no offense to grips, they're amazing people, but you could replace the grip. You can't replace Tom Cruise.
Yeah, so we've had these sort of, I've gone through this on various sets where one of the actors or one of the lead actors not became positive, but they had a potential exposure, let's say.
Oh gosh.
So then we respect the 10-day, quarantine
Wow.
period.
Oh my gosh. How expensive is that? That's so crazy to put 10 days of a shoot on hold.
Right. And so they try to shoot scenes without the main person or without those people if they can. They can still continue to do. So every situation we literally look into as individually and we contact trace every positive case. We figure out who potentially also was exposed, and then we test during the quarantine period, continue to. Sometimes we're even testing family members outside of the set because it helps us to figure out how this thing started or what direction it's going to figure out when we can restart. So it's been really interesting and very, very weird.
Very
weird year.
Very weird year, to say the least. Very weird year. The other thing that we saw, interesting topic, they were saying on TikTok, there is a TikToker who posted that Mucinex D helps get you pregnant for women. Mucinex D.
The D was getting them pregnant?
That's what they're saying. They're saying
it could be that.
Mucinex D is getting them pregnant.
It could be.
The thought is, I guess, if you talk to like cervical hormonal experts, they're saying that the cervical lining becomes thinner when you're on Mucinex D because that's the whole point. That's what it does in your nasal cavities. That's what we take Mucinex D is it thins your nasal cavity so that you get less expression.
What's the D?
The D is the
Is it dextromethorphan?
yes.
Isn't that's just for coughing? Right?
That's a decongestant, but it works in the lungs. It works in all the mucus layers in the body. The problem is it's very, very drying. So you're not supposed to use it more than the intended period, which is 1 or 2 days when you're really sick. You should not use D on a regular basis. Mucinex D, and just to clarify. And the thought is that it thins the cervical.
You need the D on the regular basis to get pregnant.
Yes, to get pregnant, you do. It's part of the mandatory equipment. Yes, but
at least in a natural.
But yeah, I guess the thought was that Mucinex thins the cervical lining and therefore better sperm penetration.
Got it.
But there's absolutely no science to back this up. There's absolutely no data to show this.
Well,
so.
that doesn't stop people these days.
Yeah, it doesn't stop TikTok claims.
Yeah,
it does not stop TikTok claims. TikTok on medicine's funny. Did you ever end up joining?
I've been someone who helps me a little with my social media has advised me to finally get TikTok.
But are you gonna?
I've never posted on it.
Are you just gonna post regular stuff, or are you gonna participate? Like I don't participate. I just post stuff randomly, but I don't do like the TikTok stuff.
I don't know.
The dances and like the things and it's probably a good thing. I think
we should.
Yeah, maybe we should. It's probably helpful.
Maybe in the new year.
Yeah, maybe
I need a Christmas break to think about it.
yeah, absolutely.
To think about that.
But social media is getting weird. Did you see that influencer who was like the Hispanic Kim Kardashian?
Yeah,
she passed away. She was.
I don't remember her name.
29. Her name is I think Jocelyn.
Yeah, she had like 12 million followers.
Yeah,
right,
huge following.
Jocelyn Cano, right?
Jocelyn Cano, yeah, huge followers. And she had a botched butt lift surgery in Colombia.
So what does that, take me through, what does that mean exactly?
Well, the problem with, I would say plastic surgery, the biggest risk of plastic surgery is poor perioperative anesthetic management.
Okay.
So anesthesia for plastic surgery is usually done on patients who are young and healthy, but there are people who aren't. There are people who have some medical conditions they may not even know about. And so after surgery of any type, you need to have a really good team. Your anesthesia team, your doctors, the nurses, the staff have to be very present, very informed, and understand how to take care of emergent situations. Because a lot of surgery centers, especially outpatient surgery centers where these kind of procedures are usually done, it's very routine, day in, day out. There's very little emergencies. It's not like the hospital where, there's a code every 12 minutes, we have a code once a year.
Right.
You know, it's very rare. But the problem is that if the staff's not used to that mentality, when something does happen emergently, it can really go bad really fast.
That's why you have your lovely wife.
That's why I have my lovely wife, and why me and her are both very in tune with what the patient's needs are. And if there is an emergency, we are very quick to act, you know, re-intubate if needed, protect the airway, transfer to a hospital if needed, things like that.
Yeah.
There's an example, a really sad one that happened in Denver last year. A young girl, I think 18 years old, she was getting breast implants, very routine surgery at a hospital outpatient center, and she passed away.
Wow.
And what they've ended up finding out is that during the surgery or after the surgery, at some point, she was basically hypoxic for like multiple minutes, like something like 10 minutes almost, where the ET tube wasn't connected properly, and she was left alone at some point during the surgery, and no one was in the room with her at some point while she was disconnected from the monitors and hypoxic, and she ended up dying from brain injury.
Wow.
And it's
Aren't they on continuous monitoring?
There is,
There
but
should be,
but
right?
there should be, but if no one's there to
look at them.
alert when the beeps are happening, if no one's there to do something about the beeping,
Wow.
and so that's the whole gist. So I would say the reason I am very, very against people traveling to Colombia or Mexico to get cheap plastic surgery, because that's the only reason.
Yeah.
Very few people travel to these countries because they're like, oh, the results are better.
Right.
It's because it's cheaper.
Right.
And so the reason I'm very against that is because with that, you don't have the same level of care that you get here in the United States.
Right.
I mean, Kanye West, his own mother passed
Yeah.
away from getting plastic surgery outside of America, which makes no sense to me why, you know, he's
Right.
one of the richest
Right.
people in the universe. Like why he wouldn't have just had his mom do it here in LA. But yeah, so that's my risk. And it's not the surgery itself. The plastic surgery itself, certain
There's
procedures are
occasional
riskier.
some things, yeah. With like,
Yes, so Brazilian butt lift, you can get fat embolism.
I've seen that, actually.
Yeah, so what happens is when they're using the cannula, they're going in and out to break up the fat and remove fat. Sometimes you can burst a blood vessel, and then a piece of the fat can get sucked
Yeah.
into the blood vessel.
Yeah.
And then what happens is it ends up in the circulation in the veins and ends up in your lungs. And you get a piece of fat that's now in the lungs, obstructing your lungs, and that's how you can die.
Yeah.
Very, very high risk of that with Brazilian butt lift surgery specifically, because you're doing high volume of fat transfer.
Yep.
So it's one of the riskiest. It happens here in LA, happens in America all the time.
I've seen during my residency at Cedars, we had a patient come in who was a young woman with a liposuction who basically it was like a massive pulmonary embolism from fat embolism.
And fat embolism is very hard to treat.
Yeah.
You can't dissolve the clot the way you can if it's a typical blood clot.
Yep.
A fat clot's almost impossible to dissolve.
Yep.
So very scary. So I think the whole thing with this stuff is, end of the day, the basic safety parameters matter. This is still healthcare. It's not just cosmetic elective surgery. And I think being around doctors or situations or environments where there is an emergency plan that is very, very tight is so important.
I think, you know, reading more about a lot of plastic surgery and how there's different providers doing things that may or may not be sort of either one safe or two ethical or three the right procedure.
Right.
So I was reading something about these threads, which I don't really know much about.
Yeah.
But understand
Thread
that.
lifting. Yeah. I posted about this week.
You've talked about threads before, but why don't you tell us again what they are?
So threads are these substances that are kind of like sutures, but they're made out of dissolvable stuff, like the same stuff fillers are made out of usually, hyaluronic acid, and they're made in a really tight woven way that they last longer, and they can pull like 1 to 2 pounds of weight technically. So the thought is that you put the threads in the cheeks or the lower face and you can pull the face a little bit and give some tightness to it, you know, give you a little bit of like that sculpted look without doing fillers, without surgery. But now the problem is that a lot of these thread companies, again, everything's financially purposed, right? And so thread companies have found out that, you know, well, you can use threads anywhere. We can make different types of threads. So they're doing thread lips. They're doing thread nose. I mean, it's just ridiculous now what they're doing. And I know a lot of people love doing threads in the lips and the nose and stuff like that, but I do not think it's a good idea.
So it's supposed to lift, but it just doesn't do anything?
So they want to contour the nose, but here I'll give you my really quick 4 points of why I don't think it's a good idea. One, the threads are hard substances that are linear. You can feel them. When you touch your nose, you can literally feel that you have a linear line in your nose. It feels super weird.
Yeah.
Number two, you can see it sometimes. You can see a little anterior projection from the linear delineation on on the nose, and it looks weird.
Okay.
Number 3, you can have skin color changes because it's a hard, firm substance that's lifting your skin up a little bit, so you can get skin colorations on the nose. And number 4, you can create a ton of scar tissue. So if you're a patient who's considering maybe getting surgery in the future, but you just want to test something out to see if you like something before you do surgery, you might be causing a ton of scar tissue that's going to make your surgery much more complicated, much more dangerous.
Got it. So if you have a threat appointment coming up for your nose, cancel.
Cancel. And my strong, urgent opinion, cancel. Unless you are never going to get surgery and you are okay with the
But it
1,
sounds
2,
like
and
those
3.
other things are bad too.
Those other things aren't ideal, but if you're okay with it and you think that looks good, then fine.
Yeah.
I just don't understand why anyone would think that looks good, but
Fair enough.
fair enough.
Fair
But
enough.
that's the plastic surgery updates in the world right now.
What were you doing on the doctors this week?
The doctors this week, we had a great segment. We did a little 5-minute facelift is what we called it.
Okay.
And we were using hyaluronic acid, naturally safe dissolvable fillers to help rejuvenate the lower face. So we all have these things called jowling, like the jowls
Yeah.
on our bottom of our cheeks
My
that kind of
favorite
fall.
dogs have those.
Yeah, oh, the cutest dogs. Cutest
those
dogs.
hounds.
Yeah. And so what we do is with fillers, we lift that up just a little bit. Really quick, really safe, really effective. And it was cool, but it was weird because it was my first time doing pandemic TV.
Yeah.
So instead of going to Paramount Studios and like doing the big hoorah on Paramount Stage 50 like we always do, this time instead we are in Zoom doing it from our clinic.
Right.
Very different.
Wearing a
very
mask.
weird. Wearing masks.
Yeah.
But it was cool. I was sandwiched between Rachel Ray and Wayne Brady. So that
Wow.
my segment was sandwiched
That's
between
quite
them.
a
So
group
it was
to-
pretty cool.
That's great.
Yeah, it was fun. It was a lot of fun.
Big week for Modern Prescription.
Big week. LA Times front cover, Dr. Toll, and first of many. I'm super excited.
I can't believe this was the first time I was on the front cover of the LA Times.
You're like, come on, guys.
It's been come on.
That's awesome. But now I'm
was-
excited.
Yeah, once I was in the Beverly Hills Courier as a kid for we won the AYSO championship. So there
What
you
is
go.
that?
It's like when we were 10 years old, like a soccer.
Oh, it's soccer. That's amazing.
That was my other first front page. That was what I was saying.
That's your other friend. Okay,
It was
nice.
funny because, the same day I had, the CNN article and the Yahoo News article. So you could tell by age how people consume their news. So, my parents and their friends were like, "Oh, I saw you on the cover of the LA Times. Amazing." And then my friends were like, "Hey, I saw you on CNN. Whatever, that was cool." And I said, "Did you see the cover of the LA Times?" They're like, "Who the hell reads the LA Times?" So it's funny. Anyway,
That's so true. My parents still read the newspaper.
my
at home,
dad
too.
actually sent me the LA Times article, and because
The physical.
I'm my generation, which I am, I don't have a
Subscribe.
membership to it, so I
Yeah.
couldn't read the article.
Right,
So
right.
he had to send me his login.
That's so funny. Yeah, I don't even have physical articles come to my house anymore. I
No,
don't
no,
even
yeah,
get
yeah.
the newspaper.
Yeah.
But you should get that. Frame it. That's cool.
Yeah, I'm gonna try to get it.
Yeah, that's awesome. First of many. Well, it's been a good year.
Yeah.
It's been a great year. It's been a good
So-
journey for us.
So I guess this is gonna be our last episode this year.
year.
Short hiatus.
Yeah, short hiatus. We're going to come back much more structured, much more planned out for season 2.
Do you have your end of year kind of look back at your year and
Definitely.
think about what you want to do differently next year? Have
Yeah.
some goals for next year.
Absolutely.
When do you typically do that?
I think throughout December, for me, December is my busiest time,
Yeah.
as one of my highest volume surgical months of the year. And this year being even higher than ever before. So I usually do that at the end of December into January because January slows down a little bit for me. But right now I just, pray for these patients and work hard to take care of them, make sure they're safe and happy. And then once it slows down, then I get that break to do that.
So usually it's that week, the Christmas to New Year's week. I try to have that be a week that I'm closed at the office.
Yeah, that's
because a
great.
lot of people are traveling anyway.
Yeah, they're not making appointments.
It's people may have things come up, but you don't generally like go get your physical right before New Year's when
Electively,
you're,
yes,
traveling
yes.
and stuff like that. So it's a little slower. So that's a time where I really try to reflect on the year, think about the good things that happened, the things I wish could have gone a little differently.
Yeah, of course.
And then set. I'm a big goal setter.
Yeah.
So I have short-term and long-term goals in all different parts of my life. So
Yeah.
in my personal life, growing as a person, in
Yeah.
my professional life, and some of my relationships, and so
Yeah.
I find that to be super important and helpful. And
What is your what's a personal goal that you have? Like not relationship wise, not career wise, just what's a personal goal that you have?
I think this year at times I would not, I guess, keep the time for myself as much as I needed to.
Because you were growing two big businesses this year.
I just was I was very busy, pulled in a lot of directions. And I think it was not, obviously, listen, COVID was a once in a generation or lifetime thing to happen.
Yes,
And
of course.
my patients needed me to build out the things we did, and that led to kind of like the whole testing thing sort of. It was a sort of an accident, like I said.
Yeah.
It started just trying to be able to get my own patients tested.
Out of necessity, yeah.
And then it sort of morphed into what it morphed into.
Yeah, to
It's
help
been
more
so
people.
interesting, but it was a time suck. And so, normally, like we were talking about with Dr. Raj, I'm playing sports and I'm doing all these other things that are good for me,
Yeah.
that I need. And I think I found that at times I was just very drained, very tired,
Right.
needed a break. And so I'm taking the break. I'm gonna have a week off and kind of recharge the batteries.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. It's such a good one. I would say mine's probably very similar.
Yeah.
Just focusing a little bit more on yourself. And what I think a lot of us get caught up is like me time, and really focusing on yourself is not relaxation. Like sometimes we sit in front of the TV for a few hours. That's not me time. That's actually like not constructive. to your-
It should be productive you time.
Yes, that's what I'm trying to get more into,
Yeah.
more productive me time.
Yeah. I think
'cause-
sometimes if you're really, really busy, those 2 hours actually are pretty nice to watch TV.
to just shut your mind off.
But
Yeah.
if you're someone who has a lot of those 2 hours every day,
Yeah.
then you're better off
Useless.
using them for something else.
Exactly. Exactly.
But I agree, using the time to, reflect, think, plan, relax, meditate, play sports, stretch, do your physical
Absolutely.
therapy, like because, the truth is that investment of time in yourself will give results back, actually, both in how you feel, but also you'll do better at work. You'll do better
absolutely.
in your relationships if you take care of yourself.
Absolutely. And I've definitely noticed that we all, it's a cliche saying, but it's true. We all overestimate what we can do in 1 year, and we all underestimate severely what we can do in 5 years. And
think
so
that's true.
I really build things out in like 5 year plans for
Yeah,
me. And so right now I'm setting all my new 5 year plans, so 2020, 2025
Got it.
plans.
Can't wait to hear.
Yeah. So that's really, really exciting for both of us that we're growing. We are able to help people with hopefully our thoughts and wisdoms, and at least things that we learn every day at work, and we're able to share them on the
Hopefully
waves now.
semi-helpful.
Yeah, and continue to like, share, subscribe, send this to friends. Go back and listen to some of the older episodes. We try to really break down cool topics in each one. And season 2, we're going to bring a lot more structure, a lot more guests. It's going to be really exciting.
Yep.
So awesome. Happy New Year.
Share.
Yeah.
Enjoy your time off.
Yeah, enjoy your time
we'll see you
off.
next
Yeah,
year.
everyone deserves it. All right, take care, guys.